What's up, guys? Welcome to a very special episode of Out of the Shadows. I'm doing some collaborations. Hopefully, this will be the first of many. This is our first shot, so we'll see what happens. This is my brother Tulio. I wanted to kind of do this to give everyone a perspective of myself, who's dealt with clinical issues of depression and things like that, and from a person who obviously he is human. He's experienced the full spectrum of emotions, but hasn't had to deal with anything clinical per se. So I don't know. I guess the first thing we can talk about right now, being that with all the COVID-19 stuff, how are you trying to just kind of occupy yourself, structure your day, or what's your game plan, so to speak?
Well, I was laid off of work 2 weeks ago. This is my second, no, I think my third full week, second full week. I was laid off 2 weeks ago, Monday. Um, so it's been weird. The very first week was just completely surreal um, because I work in a casino on the Strip in Vegas. So getting laid off there, I kind of sort of saw it coming a little bit because I knew some of the other casinos had announced that they were closing like their sports books and poker rooms and stuff. I work in a poker room. So I kind of figured that it was going to happen. I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of sort of saw a little bit that like entire casinos would be closing too, but it was so it's still completely surreal that it seems like impossible. So I didn't really know if it would, the scale to which it would happen. I think I kind of envisioned more like we would be open, but nobody would be there. Is
Yeah.
kind of what I thought more would happen. Like I didn't really think like they would close, but just because of I was well aware of like what was going on um, around the world before it came to the US, and like once it hit the US, I knew that we were not like prepared to kind of deal with it, or that like they thought it was going to be as serious as it was. So I just sort of envisioned, I think, people not coming. I thought I'd probably still be going to work, but just people wouldn't be there. So that was like really, really weird. The thing though that I've been doing to try to like occupy my time is, like I said, I work full time in a casino on the Strip in a poker room. I've been doing that for God forever. Um, but I'm also trying to build a e-commerce business. So I've been kind of sort of trying to concentrate on that more. Um, but that's also very difficult because even with that, the majority of my sales, I've been concentrating more on Amazon than on eBay. But Amazon's, kind of holding the country together at this point. One of the lifelines for the majority of the country, the world probably. So they've really limited the type of things, the items that they're selling. They won't even let you ship stuff in unless it's on their essential items list. They're pushing back ship dates for anything that isn't essential and stuff like that. So that's been kind of tough. I'm really lucky, some people that are like really have been doing it for a long time and are highly successful Amazon sellers. But even with them, it's changing like on a day-to-day basis, so I've been kind of trying to do that. I'm hopeful in the sense of trying to figure out a way. I'm hopeful and determined to figure out a way to make that work in the meantime. But yeah, like I said, it's just been completely surreal. The first week didn't feel real at all. Like I literally would just wake up every day, kind of when you wake up from a nightmare and you're not sure if it was a nightmare or reality, and then you're like, oh shit, thank God. But it's not what was happening. It was the opposite. Where I was waking up hoping that that would happen, and then going, oh my God, this is real. And even knowing it was real, it didn't feel real at all.
So you were obviously anxious when it started, I'm assuming, based on that answer.
Yeah, I mean, to a point. Um, I don't know if anxious, maybe that is the right word. The way that, and if the people that haven't experienced this probably won't be able to relate, but the best way, the only thing that I could really explain it or relate it to was when I would compete in jujitsu. it was the feeling of stepping on the mat. The anticipation is always the worst part, before anything major and scary is happening. And at least like for me personally, when like something scary is happening, I'm horrified, but horrified in the background. Like the forefront of me mentally and my personality and dealing with it is, all right, this is happening. We got to do it. We're going to get through it, and I'll deal with the fear or the aftermath or whatever afterwards, like it or not, this is happening. And it was kind of like that. Because I compete, that was what I thought of immediately. Was I'm like, oh, it felt like I was just on the mat and I'm looking at the ref, I'm looking at my opponent, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this at all. Holy shit, no, boom. And it's happening. So I guess, yeah, like I said, maybe, anxious, fearful. And then, but like I said, I mean, I always try to just accept whatever's happening, and you know what I mean, like it or not, and just go, all right, you know, I gotta just do it, bite down on the mouthpiece and go. And then, just know that I'm gonna come out this. So the same thing is as when I compete, I know no matter how bad it goes, I'm still gonna get out of it. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna literally die or be mangled. Like there's not gonna be a catastrophic end to it. It might not end well. It might not end the way that I want it to, but even like the worst case scenario isn't really that bad in the grand scheme of things. It's gonna suck. It might suck as it's happening. It might, make the rest of that day not go well, or the next day might be, a little disappointing. You know what I mean? Not exactly what I want it to be, not ideal, but it's not gonna be a catastrophic end.
Yeah.
So same type of sort of, one way or another, we're gonna get out of it.
Well, no, it's interesting. Well, one thing I wanted to point out, because you just said it, when you said bite down on your mouthpiece and just do it. Anyone who actually follows me, I've used that quote a million times, and now they can see where it came from, because I stole that from you, apparently.
From Joe Rogan.
Oh, all right. Well, there's a line of stealing. I think it's interesting too, though, that how you say that, how like it's not like, oh, anxiety might be the word to describe it, because I've had similar experiences to where, like you say, like it's, to me anyway, it's like I don't want to use the term anxiety, because I always think anxiety means, heart palpitations or some kind of physical manifestation of it, to where, like you say, if it's just a worry, there's not a physical reaction. And I'm very much the same way. Like, I talk about a lot how I've dealt with depression, but anxiety for me is rare that I'll have actual physical symptoms of it. And it's funny because, that was your reaction. You don't think of it as anxiety. I often don't think of certain things as anxiety. So those are like kind of our defaults. And I have a friend who, she has actually experienced anxiety primarily. Depression's like her background versus me being the other way. And when I said to her, I was like, oh, I usually don't get, I said I was anxious, but I was like, there's no physical sign of it. And she literally goes, I don't know what that means. I was like, what? She like didn't understand being anxious without having some physical effect. So I think it's interesting how everyone's kind of definition of it in a way varies in way of responding to anxiety.
Yeah, because I mean, like, to me, for me to say I was anxious or I'm anxious, like, to me, that means like you get that like sick feeling in your stomach, maybe you almost start sweating, you're like physically feel nervous, and you're just going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. And to me, I experience that more usually in anticipation of things than the actual as it's happening.
Interesting. Well, no, well, that makes sense. I
Yeah,
think that makes sense in general. I mean, I think for, like you say, it's always, beforehand is always worse than whatever's going on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then like even whenever it starts, whatever the event is that I'm have that anxious anticipation for, um, once it happens, it starts, or I start going and just doing whatever it is that I really don't want to do. Like I said, it goes to like, it's still there, but it falls to like the background. And then usually like as it progresses, or not even progresses, but just as time goes on with whatever it is I'm doing, or the thing that I didn't want to have to deal with, I'm dealing with, or whatever it is, it starts to dissipate. And then almost every time, by the time it's over with, it's usually gone. And I'm usually like, oh, thank God that's over.
Yeah. Well, and
And
that's that,
relief.
that's cool though, and that's a good point to bring up, because it's I don't even know that I've mentioned it specifically, but I know I have it in underlying themes on my videos on this channel. But the way I think of it, if I'm actually putting it into words, is I refer to this as pull the trigger therapy, meaning like you said, there's shit you don't want to do. And in life in general, no matter who you are, there's shit you have to do that you don't want to do. And I find it better, and I'm almost more likely now as to where, like, people have problems with procrastination. I want to do it immediately, because I know that the sooner I do it, the sooner it's done.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's I try to do that, and with certain things I do, but a lot of times I don't. I definitely procrastination is definitely something that I need to work on for sure. I've always been like that. I mean, we grew up in the same house. It's not shocking that it's a character trait or personality trait, or whatever that I have and deal with. But it's something that I try to do, and it always just depends. Like certain things are easier to do it with, and other things are more difficult. And actually, as you were just talking about that, what I thought of, I think a good analogy for it is like pulling off a band-aid. Like it's something that you don't want to do. Like nobody wants to do that. You know what I mean? It's never enjoyable, but it has to be done at the same time. You can't leave the band-aid on there. And it depends on what it is. You know what I mean? Like it could be a little bit of like, you get a little bit of anxiety or anxious where you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. But if it's like a little band-aid over a tiny cut, it's going to suck, but it's going to suck for like half a second, and then it's over with, and it's not a big deal. If it's a bigger band-aid, you're going to be not looking forward to it more. And you know what I mean? Like kind of however bad or big of a event or situation that it is that you're facing, the anticipation's worse, and maybe the process of taking it off is going to be worse. But either way, I try to remind myself of the other end. Like I said, like even with the current, whatever you want to call it that we're in, like at this
yeah,
point, just everything that people would have thought impossible is happening. I don't think anybody ever would have envisioned that the entire world would be dealing with something at once. Um, so I just try to always remind myself that it's going to be over, and it's, almost nothing's as bad. Things are almost never as bad as you thought they would be when it's over with. There's always a little bit of a sense of relief. There's always a little bit of, I made a bigger deal about that than I needed to. Um, and I mean, certain things, I mean, like this, I don't know what to expect, when it's over. Uh, but I know that things will become whatever the new normal will be. And then in a situation like this too, like what I try to think of to stop myself from like freaking out that the world's ending or what the hell's going on, is that the first thing I thought of is the mass amount of incomprehensible gratitude everybody's going to have when we can get back to even a small semblance of like normal life. Like I think every single person alive right now would be thrilled to deal with whatever they were complaining about 3 weeks ago.
yeah,
Whatever, like a bad day you had a month ago, whether you're standing in line or, you know what I mean? Like whatever, whether it's something tiny like that or like whatever it was, like our normal daily complaints, people would love to have, like whatever aggravated people on a regular basis, 3-4 weeks ago, I'm sure you miss it. You wish to God you were aggravated by whatever little things aggravated you or, bothered you on a daily basis. So I think that when it's when we do get to return to somewhat of a normal life, people will be overwhelmed with gratitude just for everything, all the little things. Like I think that this is really helping put things into perspective, so that, like I said, all the little tiny things that we took for granted will be nice. I even like sitting in traffic. You know, I don't think that's gonna last. But the first time all of us are caught in traffic again, I think we're gonna look around and go, "This is nice." It's
Yeah.
actually nice. There's like millions of people out, all doing all out at the same time. It's good to see this again. I missed it. I thought that I hated it. Turns out I missed it. When it was gone, I missed it. So I think I try to think of that. And then the other thing that I thought of, like I was telling you on the phone the other day, I was also thinking, like, I started to think, oh my God, like things may never be normal. Like what was normal might just be gone. And that's freaked me out for a second. But then I actually was watching Deadwood on HBO, and it's a show about it's as historically accurate as possible. It's all real people. It's all based off actual events. Um, and third season, a lot of it is about them being kind of afraid of actual government coming in. Because like for the most part, they kind of just like ran it on their own. It's sort of like he had unwritten but agreed upon rules, sort of regulation type things, just the way that they lived by themselves. So when there's like actual governing body coming in and approaching, they're getting really like scared about it. Everybody, like everybody has their own concerns for different reasons, but everybody in the town or camp or whatever they call it was concerned with that, and their life changing forever. And so that made me realize that throughout human history, there have been massive events that have happened, either on small scales or large scales. So whether people realize it or not, they changed life forever from that point forward. But I think it's undeniable that for the most part, except for like maybe horrible things that have happened in war or something, um, things always end up progressing and ultimately getting better. And I'm sure it's very scary for the people it's happened to every single time, which is unfortunately us now. But so that's the other thing that I try to remind myself of, instead of like just thinking about the things you miss, you wish you could do, you can't do, will I ever be able to do that again? Whatever. I just try to remind myself of the gratitude that I'll feel when I can be normal, and aggravated by the, little things that used to aggravate me, I'll be thrilled for. And I think everybody will. There will be a nice collective worldwide feeling of this is great. And then also remind myself that even though there will be a new normal, what was normal probably just isn't going to be normal ever again. That's not a bad thing. Even if we don't realize it right as it's happening, ultimately we'll look back on this 5 years, 10 years from now, maybe sooner, but whatever, like at some point in time, this is going to be a massive turning point, and it's going to turn for the better one way or another. We may not realize it immediately as it's happening. I'm sure most people don't realize it now. But one way or another, things will end up better than they were before.
Yeah. Well, and this is good. We're covering a lot of ground, obviously. And I think, one thing that's kind of an underlying theme here that I totally agree with, and they talk about a lot in psychology, and actually it's called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, a lot. They emphasize acceptance. And like you said, this is a scary time for everyone, but it's important in situations when, yes, any situation you can exercise a level of control over, obviously do. But when it's a situation like this, where like, you or I can't control the fact of, you know, uh, whatever resolution it's going to be, whether that's a vaccine or time passing, we can't affect that. So I think in times like these, realizing that you have to just accept what's going on and deal with it. And like you said before, with the competition analogy, like we're not, yes, unfortunately and tragically, some people will die from the virus, but realistically, you're not likely to be that person who's going to, this is the end of your life kind of thing. So to kind of remind yourself, like you said, like this, it's not fun and it is scary, but this is the situation, and just kind of take it as it comes. I don't think, like you said, we don't know what to expect. And I think to a degree, because of that, this is a situation where to me, it's better to not have hard set plans, or to like have a hard set, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do for the next weeks, months, whatever. It's that kind of, that mentality of one day at a time, which I don't love that way of putting it. I think of it as, I prefer saying one thing at a time, because I mean, it's the same concept, but that resonates with me better.
Real quick, sometimes when I'm working out, I think of the Kimmy Schmidt, you can do anything for 10 seconds. And I mean, so I mean, you can break it down at whatever level you need to break it down to. But I think that that's very true. And I've heard alcoholics, like recovering alcoholics or people that used to, be addicted to drugs say the same thing. Like you said, like sometimes it's a day at a time, sometimes it's an hour at a time, sometimes it's 10 minutes at a time. But however you have to break it down to get through it, whatever works for you works.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something that's a very personal. It's not something that you can say universally, like this is how to do it, go.
Right.
We're taking a day at a time, great. If it's an hour or 10 minutes or whatever, then do whatever you have to do to make you get through that. But I think that that's definitely necessary for people to cope with just about anything.
Yeah.
So
And from I guess in a grander sense, in terms of the longevity of it, kind of in thinking about that worry of, well, what's going to happen. From my own personal experience, I'm not an addict in any way, which I'm grateful for, but being that bipolar disorder is one of my diagnoses, even though I don't cycle constantly, being that I have experienced that mania, especially when I started to kind of come out of depression and the norm was to have more of a stable mood, I was always worried. I was like, oh man, well, what if I become manic again? Because the two times that has happened, it's led to significantly um, grand scales of depression, which have severely impacted my life. And yeah, it's a medical possibility that could happen again. But I came to a point with that where I was just like, well, I can constantly live in fear of this and worry and not take on too much, because what if that happens? Or I can just keep going and manage it in whatever way I can. So
yeah,
same deal.
too that as far as that goes, like with you specifically, but I think a lot of people that are probably going to be watching this too may have had a similar type of experience where the more you work on things, like you, I really feel like you've done so much and grown in so many ways that you are way more prepared to deal with something like that now than you ever have been before. So I mean, like whether it would be like if a manic episode were approaching, I think you would be more probably in tune to maybe catch it quicker. um Either way you would be able to kind of like deal with it better, or even like the depression would follow afterwards, or even just you're just have a bad day and you're feeling depressed for whatever reason, you know what I mean, like you are much better um suited, you're stronger, you can kind of handle it better now, you know what I mean, you've figured out a lot of different coping methods and uh perspectives and things like that, so I think that whatever you handle from this point on in your life, you're better prepared, more equipped to handle. So the damage or whatever you want to call it, like as it's happening, won't be as intense. You've developed the tools that you need to mitigate whatever's happening as it's happening.
Yeah, no, and I very much agree with that. And I'm sure I've told you this before, but I know I haven't discussed it here at all. But there was a few months back, I was taking a very low dose of my mood stabilizer, which is the medication that keeps you from going into mania. And I noticed myself, I don't want to say racing thoughts, but it was moving faster, and racing thoughts is very indicative of mania. I was talking a little bit faster. So like you said, I saw these early signs, and as opposed to, whereas before I'd probably just be like, whatever. I brought them up to my psychiatrist. We increased the dosage of the mood stabilizer, and I don't know for sure, but one, it made things better, and two, it's possible, and you could theorize that we could have averted what was potentially a manic episode. So, like you say, the better prepared you are in any situation, this mental health, whatever, like you're going to be better equipped to deal with it if faced with it again.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too that not only as much as you've like grown or figured out new coping mechanisms, or like however you want to phrase it, over the last like year, a little bit more than a year. I think that because it's been many years since you've had a manic episode, but I think that one of the things that help the most with that, and you specifically, but with anybody and any problem that people have, whether it's something as minor as an issue with your car to something as major and drastic as having a manic episode and deep depression to follow, is if you can go back afterwards and try to really think about it and analyze everything that happened leading up to it. If you can identify the first few steps, then you've got better chance of avoiding it. You know what I mean? Instead of, like you said, if you're just like, whatever, I'll be fine. And then you just ignore it, and it progresses, and then you're right in the middle of it, and there's no denying it at that point. Then you're deep within the thralls of, whatever. Like I said, if it's just something as major as a manic episode, or as minor as, whatever, something breaks, or, like whatever, and any type of problem that people deal with, I think that many people are not analytical enough, or don't actually stop to like try to think of what led to wherever they're at, or whatever the problem that occurred. And the more that you do that, the easier it is to avoid the same thing happening in the future.
Right. And that's true. And we've talked about this a lot, being analytical. I think some people obviously, are more prone or have more of a disposition just because of their personality to be analytical. But I think even if you're more of a person who, I've heard the term before, like you're more concrete, you don't think quite as deeply. I think people should, I would advise anyone to try and be more analytical and think about, if you're having a problem with any kind of a relationship, or even with anything, you don't have the job you want, whatever, look at yourself and be like, all right, well, what's going wrong, and what can I control in myself, and kind of what's leading this. And like you said, look under the surface, because if you're not analytical, then we do, like we've been talking about, then it's, whatever, and you keep going, and just the same stuff keeps happening.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, like I said, most people can benefit from that. You're not going to grow and mature as a person in any way if you're not doing that and trying to figure out how and why every and anything happened. I mean, whether it's even just people that maybe don't have issues, or don't want to think that they actually have, don't have major issues, but they just are in a cycle of constantly being in horrible relationships. After, just constantly their whole life, they're just in bad relationships. Like, it's, if they stop and try to figure out what causes them to get there in the first place, then it's easier to avoid that further down the road. If you just ignore what's happening, you're going to keep doing it over and over and over again, or the same thing's going to happen over and over and over again. You know what I mean? Especially with like mental illness, I don't want to say you're going to do it again, because it's not something that people do. But like you said, it's something that you can go, I think this is happening, so let me talk to my doctor about it, and maybe we can avoid what could potentially be something horrible from happening.
Yeah.
You can actually, like I said, like avoid a major thing from happening.
Yeah, and it's a basic, premise of psychology in general, and it's the same thing. Whereas I think anyone can benefit from therapy, whether you have, a diagnosable or clinical mental health problem or not. Anyone can benefit from it, from, like you say, being able to look at and analyze, because no matter what level it's on, whether it's emotional and it's a relationship issue, or if it is even on, let's say, the medical level for, a depressive episode approaching or a manic episode, then, like you just said, you're able to mitigate it. Whereas, uh, I think it was Socrates, the unexamined life isn't worth living. Maybe not in quite exactly that way, but it's, the unexamined life is going to be less effective, is the way I would put it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like I've suggested, I just got into Mike Tyson's podcasts, and the few I've listened to, it doesn't matter who he's talking to. He ends up getting deep philosophical with almost everybody. And I think that that's a great example of that, because I don't think that there's any denying that that man had all sorts of different issues and, mental illness issues and stuff. And I mean, the ability to turn himself around is, I think, like shows that just about almost anybody can do it. And he constantly refers to, like, what caused things from his past, for all the way from his childhood, would explain why he was the way he was as a teenager, in his 20s, when he was the champ, and, like all sorts of things. And then just eventually being able to look back, reflect, acknowledge, not deny what was happening, and then grow from there and avoid it, by, like I said, like going back and just sort of seeing what the source was. But you have to analyze it in order to be able to do that. If you just ignore things and kind of like go with the flow with everything and just sort of like let things happen, or wait to see what happens, then you're going to end up having things repeat themselves.
Yeah, and this is kind of a major point to close on, and obviously we could get way deeper into it. But you and I were talking about this the other day, knowing, or being able to get to the root cause, or as best you can, to kind of see where certain things originated from and understand why they're there. Just, it's kind of the same problem that I think the medical industry, shall we call it, is having right now. So many doctors prescribe pills for a symptom, but don't really look at the underlying what might be causing this. Like, I'm sure you know people too who have some kind of issue with some kind of digestive issue, and it's, oh, here's this, or oh, maybe try this, and they're not getting to the root of, like, it could be stress related, it could be related to things in their environment, whether it's, mold exposure or whatever. Just, there's usually a deeper reason. And
Yeah.
I think society in general, sometimes it's laziness, and sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge that leads to not getting deep enough. But I know that we've been doing this for a little while now, and I know that you got to get going, but thank you for coming on. And I definitely hope that we can do it again sometime, especially now with what's going on. I think this is not only good for the audience, but even for just you and I as individuals, to be able to occupy our time in a constructive way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I look forward to doing it again.
All right.
Definitely.
All right,
All right.
Tej. It was great having you. I'll talk to you later. And everyone, until later, be well.
All right. I love you, Matt. Talk
All
to
right.
you later.
Love you
Bye.
too. Bye.